It feels so good to finally be back with a new video starting the first day of 2022 out on the right foot. I hope everyone has a fantastic year and will begin the year properly with a new Souls video. Those of you that have followed my channel for a good amount of time know that I absolutely adore Demon Souls. I don't want to have a long intro after being gone for so long. You guys know how much I love this game, so just one note. Other than the final run through 1-4 to Old King Allant, I chose not to include the final areas of 2-3, 3-3, 4-3, or 5-3 as they are essentially boss arenas rather than full levels. I plan to post more frequently going forward, and I'm gonna stream more this year. That's all you need to know. Let's do this. 5-2, Swamp of Sorrow. I've never played the King's Field series, but the OG Swamp level of FromSoftware seems as good a place as any to start this list. I love Demon Souls so much that I don't really hate any level, but the list has to start somewhere. It's highly unlikely that you'd find the Sodden Ring on a first run, and it doesn't exist in the original. Even if you do have knowledge of the ring, it's difficult to obtain, which on a first run means you'll likely be trudging through the sludge of the Swamp of Sorrow, or as the Archstone puts it, the swamp is a cesspool of putrilage, vermin, and plague. The level is extremely long and the shortcut is quite difficult to find. There's nothing wrong with a level being long, but if you don't find the shortcut, the nature of the runback is more frustrating than enjoyable. One saving grace is the large Sword of Moonlight, which looks as stunning as you would think in current-gen graphics. The Meat Cleaver NPC, seemingly a precursor to Maneater Mildred, is a decent fight. As well, there is quite a bit of lore between Maiden Astraea, Garl Vindlin, and Selen Vindlin, which I covered in my boss rankings video, but in short, Maiden Astraea essentially lost her faith, began to take on the role of a demon, and started taking her followers' souls to numb their pain. Also, I shouldn't fail to give a shout out to our pal Dirty Colossus. 5-1, Depraved Chasm. Maybe a predictable choice, but I can't be the only one that routinely saves World 5 for last in any given playthrough. What seems like a precursor to Blighttown, this twisted maze of rickety planks is sure to confuse many on a first run. The level description mentions its inhabitants, afflicted by poison and plague, await their deaths in this forsaken place, attacking those who wander in, hoping to offer their souls to the one woman who showed them compassion. Obviously referring to Maiden Astraea. The enemies mainly consist of these depraved followers, noted as shambling, pained, and horrifically disfigured. The depraved ones were once people, but discarded into the Valley of Defilement, living in putrid disease and decay. They are every bit as horrific as the valley itself. You can find a lesser-known weapon in Istarel in Pure White World Tendency. It is covered with engravings and is one of the few revelations from God, as noted in the weapon description. One of the few weapons that scales on faith. Again, I don't really hate any level, but I would assume 5-1 wouldn't rank highly for many of you. It's capped off by the evil Leechmonger. 2-2, the Tunnel City. By far the easiest level in the game. Step 1, run down this tunnel. Step 2, take the leap. Step 3, you're at Flame Lurker. If you don't remember, the level was edited to look this way in one of the original gameplay trailers. I had a hunch this was probably the case, but still took the leap for a good laugh at the very least on my first run. You can indeed drop your way down the platforms for pretty quick access to Flame Lurker if you choose. I'm honestly not sure why this level specifically was designed so you can bypass a majority of the area. This design sticks out quite a bit for me relative to the other levels in the game. While it's not in 2-2, I would be remiss not to mention the Dragon Bone Smasher, one of the most fun weapons in the game. A bladeless thick mass of iron used for smashing. According to the ancestors of Stonefang's excavators, it's said this weapon was created to face dragons and is imbued with magic to protect the wielder from fire. You'll also run into Skurver the Wanderer, a plunderer who entered Boletaria through the fog in hopes of pillaging the riches of the deceased. He's found himself trapped within a mineshaft of the Stonefang Tunnel. His search for the Dragon Bone Smasher is outlined when speaking to him. You'll most likely get pretty lost taking the long way around and searching through the intricate tunnels for lost loot and making your way down the lava river. Our old friend Patches makes a brief appearance with a poorly planned trap as always. While I'm not a fan of the level's layout, there is a good amount of fun to be had, especially with Flame Lurker capping off the area along with a cinematic Dragon God encounter. 4-2, Ritual Path. One of the most vaunted runs in Demon Souls, 4-2 would certainly be in the running for most difficult level in the game. It was a complete nightmare in my Soul Level 1 stream, but it did make for some funny moments. Speaking of, I think next stream I'd like to either try to Soul Level 1 run another game or speedrun something. I'm not sure yet, but look out for that later today or tomorrow. Anyways, the ritual path, known as the Archstone of the Adjudicator Demon, bestows tokens of heroism upon the deserving dead who are delivered by Shadowmen to the depths of the Shrine of Storms, where they are cleansed by bright water and mourned by the storm. The actual gameplay can be a complete nightmare as there aren't any shortcuts as I'm aware, and there are many places the run can go wrong. The Thief Ring will ease the burden in taking out the Reapers and assist in avoiding being sniped by the Storm Beasts. It's interesting to note that Ulan, also known as Phalanx, is most likely from the Shrine of Storms or has some connection as her white bow is found here, her Collige is in 4-1, and Grave Robber Blige sells her attire. Other than Blige, we of course will be able to rescue our pal Saint Urbane as well as be duped by Patches of course. For those of you that like PvP, 4-2 is one of the best areas to invade as the long linear run makes finding the host pretty straightforward. Culminating with a match versus the old hero, maybe not everyone's favorite level gameplay wise, there is quite a bit of lore to it, not to mention a magical, majestic meeting with the Storm King. 1-2, the Lord's Path. Demon Souls tends to get knocked for its linearity, but I've never had a negative connotation towards this design choice, as some of my favorite games of all time are almost entirely linear. The point being is, I love the run of the Lord's Path towards the Tower Knight as you make your way through the Red Dragon as well as multiple outlook towers, especially seeing the majestic Twin Peak Mountains in the background of the level. The enemy variety is very standard as you run into some stray hoplites, soldiers, dreglings, wolves, and a couple of blue-eyed knights. You will continue with Strava's questline as well as meet our friend Bjor of the Twin Fangs upon returning later in the game. Not the longest level, but it serves as a neat passageway between the gates of Boletaria and the Inner Ward. The ending stretch, especially without the Thief's Ring, can actually be quite tricky as you'll deal with the Red Dragon, archers, and 2 blue-eyed knights pretty much all at the same time. As mentioned, the level concludes with one of the best bosses in the game in Tower Knight. 3-2, Upper Latria. This area is one of the most gruesome and spooky, yet hauntingly wonderful areas in Demon Souls, boasting a nightmarish, eerie atmosphere. The level is more or less split into 2 areas, the towering walkways in the beginning and the Pit of Doom down below, which I honestly cannot believe does not inflict a poison or plague effect. The walkways are obviously a prime spot for hosting or invading with a Storm Ruler, Dragon Bone Smasher, Firestorm, you get the idea. Although the level is quite long, it actually ends up having a relatively stress-free runback to Maneater given a Thief's Ring or ability to deal with the Red Phantom Mind Flare on the Sharp Staircase. I wouldn't have designed the 2 areas to be so drastically separated, but perhaps FromSoftware wanted to really give the feeling of despair in how far down below the pit truly was, and maybe to give way for the falling brain. NPC-wise, we'll find Yurt, the Silent Chief, a deadly assassin whose only business in Boletaria is to aid in the misdeeds of his accomplice, the enigmatic Mephistopheles, and kill all those who have learned the ways of soul arts. While part 2 seems to be less concise than it should, we end with the nice combo of Maneater and Old Monk for a solid area conclusion. This isn't part of the rankings, but I wanted to chuck in a quick mention on the tutorial area. For me, this is a great introduction to the game, especially the reward of a bonus area for defeating Vanguard. It's infuriating on your first run if you die to him, but at least you could face his distant cousin in 4-1. One quick thing I'd like to note is you can't actually die in the area leading up to Vanguard, which gives a perfect time for new players to practice and gain a feeling for the game, although brief. A nice introduction to Demon Souls. 1-4, the King's Tower. While it isn't the longest level, there's plenty of lore and interesting tidbits about the King's Tower to warrant it a solid placing on the list. The inclusion of the 3 red phantoms of the prior bosses in the Boletarian Palace was a fantastic inclusion as we fight Ulan, the human form of Phalanx, Alfred, aka Tower Knight, and Metas, who is the Penetrator. I find this such a fun and interesting inclusion to see the versions of regular warriors before they were overcome by their demon forms. This journey, the King's Tower, once a symbol of Boletaria, stands ravaged by the claw marks of drakes, while silver-haired old King Alant sits on his crumbling throne, witness to the desolation. We'll navigate a tricky staircase section as well as the Blue Dragon, possibly aided by Bjor, before the level climaxes in our last meeting with Ostrava as we hear perhaps his most important dialogue. "My father is up above. Well, what's left of him anyways? He's transformed into a fiendish demon. I began this quest in a search for truth, but it seems I was a fool to even try. Please kill my father. In his degenerated state, he can only bring peril to the lands." We'll next fight Ostrava's Red Phantom, followed by the grand encounter with the False King. 2-1, Smithing Grounds. This desert-based land of mining presents quite the departure in scenery from the Boletarian Palace of World 1. I do appreciate the 5 distinct lands created in Demon's Souls, as along with the castle structures of World 1, World 2 is desert-themed, World 3 is prison and gothic architecture, World 4 is the Eye of the Storm, and World 5 is a cavernous underground swamp. From what I understand, the 6th Archstone would have contained a snowy atmosphere, as also possibly indicated in the title screen video. The Smithing Grounds is a fairly standard level composed mostly of scale miners, bad officials, and wolves. The difficulty of the Smithing Grounds will significantly lessen should you have access to magic, whether it be spells, the Crescent Falchion, or other based magic offense. Perhaps most importantly, 2-1 is the home to Blacksmith Ed, the second of 2 blacksmiths, as well as being the one that can create boss weapons once given the searing demon soul of Flame Lurker. There are a series of shaft elevators, with the biggest shortcut being the one next to Ed, with the crux of the level centering around lowering the lava via the large crank. Ending with a personal favorite of mine, the Armor Spider. The Smithing Grounds may not be the most spectacular level, but it's a solid area. 1-1, Boletarian Palace. One of the reasons I love the Soul series so dearly in the first place is that I'm a big fan of medieval knights and castles, and the Boletarian Castle perfectly captures this feeling. The area opens with a panoramic shot of the castle gates featuring the red menace of Boletaria. I like the design choice of seeing the grand entrance to the castle early on in the level before traversing deep within to explore and find the mechanism to lift the gate. You'll fight through a variety of dreglings, very well suited for new players to practice on in an opening level. Eventually, you'll clash with soldiers, some blue-eyed knights, and most difficult, the vaunted red-eyed knight, who guards the entrance to the mausoleum which holds Old King Doran. While the Red-Eyed Knight may seem too OP, I'm a big fan of an enemy that seems impossible to overcome at first try, where you can choose to test yourself at that moment or come back and demolish him later once you've leveled up en route to opening the mausoleum. Importantly, you'll encounter and rescue Ostrava for the first time, who simply wonders if there is any sanity left in Boletaria and generally lets you know there is something he must go do. Upon pure world tendency, you'll enter the gate early in the level, where you can meet both the human Ed Ren Phantom form of Executioner Meralda, King Alant's personal henchman, but given she has also imprisoned Yuria and Bjor, her allegiances are cloudy. The Boletarian Palace has some fun exploration, some nice return quests, and some well-placed shortcuts, making it a fantastic introductory level. 3-1, Prison of Hope. The melodic singing of the once royal mistress, the monotonous opening of cell doors, and the stormy prison atmosphere create an oddly soothing experience as you venture into the bowels of the Prison of Hope. There is the screaming of Lord Rydell, but other than that, quite relaxing. Latria, land of the Queen's Ivory Tower, an old man took revenge on the Queen by locking her family in a prison with inhuman guards. All that escapes the place are the prisoners' cries. The mundane nature of continuously opening cells may get old, but it's a nice change of pace, and somehow slowly opening cell after cell adds to the foreboding atmosphere. It can be pretty easy to get lost in the Prison of Hope, but for those who downgrade Demon's Souls for its linearity, this is your chance to get lost and explore. Along with Rydell, you'll also be able to rescue our buddy Sage Frake, the Visionary, integral to do if you're running a magic build. As well, in the Prison of Hope, you'll find possibly the coolest environmental hazard in the game in the large ballista on the bottom floor of the level, which is always fun to try and dodge your way down the Bridge of Death. Of course, don't forget to kill the Fool's Idol Puppeteer, which I totally did on my first playthrough. The level caps off with a decent red phantom fight against an NPC with a baby's nail and crossbow, and of course, a duel with the mysterious Fool's Idol. 4-1, Island's Edge. I don't know if you've ever seen 4-1 fall to pure black, but it's pretty devastating, as you'll have Black Phantom Satsuki charge directly at you upon starting the area, who can essentially one-shot you, has a gallon of health, and can fully heal himself. If you try and run past him, you're unlikely to get far, as you'll aggro the skeletons. Never mind a red phantom skeleton joins in the fun. Outside of that, surely rage-inducing sequence, fantastic level. Seriously, Satsuki's lore revolves mainly around the magic sword Makoto, named for Makoto the Giant, who apparently lived in a distant land. Maybe he lives in the 6th Archstone? Barring pure black world tendency, the first area can be made quite a bit easier with a decent shield and some parry practice. You'll also be able to have your rematch with Vanguard Demon, although not the one from the tutorial. There is a skip, most likely unintended, that allows you to bypass most of the level, especially the most tricky part where you'll navigate a narrow cliffside passage against axe-wielding skeletons as storm beasts rain down magic barbs. The island shrine of the Shadowmen, who worshipped storms and mourned the dead. Since the appearance of the flying storm beasts, the souls of the dead have been lured to the island by its demons, where they are revived by finding purchase in the bosoms of uninhabited skeletons. We'll make our initial contact with Blige, as well as locate our old friend Sparkly the Crow, integral to obtaining the Penetrator armor. The level is capped off with the Adjudicator, who you can hear of my first embarrassing encounter with in my Demon Souls boss rankings video. 1-3, Inner Ward. Now inside the belly of the beast of the Boletarian Palace, not only is 1-3 one of the best PvE areas in the game, but one of the best PvP areas in the game as well. We finally made our way inside of the main gates of Boletaria, where the streets intertwine, lie traps set by the much reviled fat officials, themselves living proof of old King Alant's madness. As with most levels in Demon Souls, the Inner Ward is mostly straightforward, other than finding Yuria on a blind playthrough, who of course unlocks the ability to obtain Curse Weapon and Firestorm. The thing Inner Ward nails is the pacing. It's not too long, it's not too brief, and the main shortcut where you'll rescue Ostrava once again unlocks a relatively straight shot to one of the best bosses in the game in Penetrator. I say relatively, as I think some may have a problem with the 3 red-eyed knights along with the amount of enemies in a small space just before the boss fog. I don't mind this, as the final encounters just before the last passage to the king should be very difficult. If you were setting up defenses for a castle, would you leave the front door wide open? Then again, if you really do dislike this enemy placement, you can always waltz through with the use of soul remains. Of course, as mentioned, Penetrator closes out this excellent level where you can now obtain his pristine armor in all of its glory. There are a few levels you may have chosen for this spot, but I'm happy to call Inner Ward the best area in Demon Souls. I hope you enjoyed my Demon Souls area rankings, and thank you so much as always if you've made it this far. Look out for streams coming up, as I would like to put out more videos generally and stream on a more frequent basis in 2022, especially as Elden Ring is only a couple months away. I have an Instagram that I've never really used, but would like to post more this year if anyone wants to check that out. Same name, ghost_riposte. I hope you guys have an awesome 2022, and I will see you in a stream later today or tomorrow. Peace.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.